Hello, my name is Ellison Heil. I am an undergraduate student at Muhlenberg College in the United States. I would like to present to you my research titled On Conservation, the Role of Integrated Conservation Development Programs in the Annapurna Conservation Area. This time last year, I was looking out my bedroom window at this viewscape doing a study on development and social change as it relates to conservation in a protected area. The Annapurna Conservation Area Project, acronymed ACAP, was established in 1986 from the government of Nepal as a protected area in which it allowed the residents within the area to remain and be essential stakeholders in all development. The Annapurna Conservation Area is not only Nepal's largest protected area, but it additionally attracts the majority of tourism at 60% of all who enter the country. The ultimate aspiration of ACAP is to establish the local residents as the long-term custodians of natural and cultural heritage and conservation in the area. ACAP uses ICDPs, or Integrated Conservation Development Programs, as a people-oriented or participatory model to provide economic and social incentives for individuals within the protected area to be incorporated in all development. The three objectives of the ICDPs are to first and foremost conserve and protect the native flora and fauna or biodiversity in the area. Additionally, to provide social and economic development opportunities for the local inhabitants. And lastly, to promote tourism in the area with minimal impact on the environment with an ecotourism agenda. The research questions that I present are: in what ways are local attitudes shaped by ACAP's ICDPs, or Integrated Conservation Development Programs? How do those that live within the protected area perceive the actions of the entity that governs them? Secondly, do these programs that are being implemented in the protected area lead to overall better conservation in the area? And then lastly is a combination of the first and second question. In what way has ACAP's ICDP model presented greater conservation awareness in the local communities within the protected area? This is an image of a leopard habitat rewilding program atop a mountain near Gandruk. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet a big cat conservationist by the name of Jack Kinross. Jack Kinross is a 6'4" New Zealand native who stands out quite substantially against native Nepalis. He provided me with a new lens to look through in relation to conservation that I will present further in this. Additionally, for my methodology, I would like to talk about my location of my study site, ACAP, and management committee staff that I had opportunities to interview with, and a marginalized community in northwestern Gandruk. To begin, I selected Gandruk as my study site because it is the pilot project of where ACAP started this protected area. This image here shows you the entirety of the protected area, of which the northern boundary is very close to the Tibetan border. Gandruk is the southernmost point and the gateway into the protected area from which people can access either Annapurna Base Camp or complete the entirety of the circuit. Now, I chose Gandruk because not only is it very readily accessible, but it is the point at which all of ACAP's funding, energy, and resources have been allocated and been focused to since its initiation in 1986. Therefore, there has been ample time for developments to come to fruition, and critique and analysis is readily available. During my time in Gandruk, I stayed with Amma. Amma is a local of the area and part of an Amma Samuha, a mothers group. in the Nepali language, who does all microcredit transactions with guest house construction and lending of loans. During my time here, I did 20 days of semi-structured interviews that fell into 3 categories, with local individuals such as AMA, ACAP management and committee staff, who I was able to discern theory and participatory ideology, and then lastly Jack Kinross, the big cat conservationist, who put me in contact with Asa the leopard to better understand the impact that all of this development was having on native flora and fauna. My interviews with ACAP's local management committee staff started at the beginning of my research period. I began with conversations with the project director, Lal Prasad Guru, who then directed me to all of his subcommittee heads. During my interviews, I was very much under the impression that participatory development and ideology was a golden standard that was one of the best aspirations humans could have. But over time, I began to understand that this theory is very differently perceived from a desk rather than in the field. And once I arrived to Gandruk, I began to ask further questions. When you arrive to Gandruk, you are sensorily overwhelmed by guest houses on each side, some providing Wi-Fi and hot water and all the amenities of a Western world, secluded in the Himalayas. Over time, as I was using my local assimilation of my family and the Nepali language, which I had become conversational in, I eventually stumbled upon this overlook of northwestern Gandruk, a forgotten ward that does not reap the reward of modernized trekking affluence. This community is entirely comprised of individuals who are subsistence farmers, who grow what they eat and have a house to sleep in and therefore can survive, but have no source of monetary income. This began on a journey to understand what is participatory development and who are the real benefactors in these models. Currently, ACAP is funded through a $20 or 2,000 rupee permit fee that every individual must pay in order to enter the protected area. This tourist fee is represented at the top of this model, but then must trickle down through multiple headquarters and regional components before reaching the individual ward, of which northwestern Gandruk is only one. During my conversations with ACAP management staff, I was able to acquire the budget allocation process and discern that the majority of funding breaks down into both tourism and community development, integrated conservation development programs. And the lowest 3, agriculture, gender, and alternative energy, which you most associate with development, are seeing the minimal amount of funding. For my discussion and analysis, I like to use an analogy called Through the Eyes of Asa that I was able to develop during conversations with Jack Kinross, and to better understand what is exactly happening with this tourism focus as it relates to conservation in the area. The Natural Resource Conservation Program is the ICDP that ACAP uses to mostly focus on conservation in the area. The main objective of this ICDP is to allocate tree felling permits. These permits are most commonly provided to guest houses in order to cut down large old-growth trees for timber use and construction in new guest houses. That way, new families can have opportunities to become more empowered through owning a guest house. Now, the problem is that those who are most connected to the environment are those who are growing the food in northwestern Gandruk, cooking over and wandering into the forest to collect firewood and fodder. The trees that are being felled for the guest house construction are essential to habitat in the area and are kicking apex predators and wildlife such as Asa out of the region. And additionally, the loss of these trees is major sequestration opportunities that are lost as well. Additionally, this is detrimental to not only the wildlife in the area, but those communities that are most connected to the environment, marginalized populations. Now, how do we incorporate these marginalized populations into overall development practices? I understand that ACAP is currently lacking in this. And instead of just providing a critique of that, I would like to propose two solutions. Firstly, focusing on the two ICDPs, agricultural development and gender development. Those in the northwestern Gandruk who grow their own food and have a place to live but have no form of monetary income need some form of monetary income. So why not create a cooperative between the guest house owners of Central Gandruk and the farmers of Northwest Gandruk, and then use the microcredit prowess of the Ama Samuhas or the Gender Development ICDP and create a farm-to-table concept that will provide a local traditional eatery experience for Westerners to eat up. This would successfully empower the two of the three lowest ICDPs. Additionally, providing opportunities for these marginalized populations. Lastly, is that the alternative energy ICDP could be bolstered by retrofitting the current infrastructure of guest houses in Gandruk. And instead of felling new trees to construct new guest houses, bringing in micro hydro power plants and passive and photovoltaic solar cells to provide alternative energy opportunities for this area. In conclusion, ACAP's ICDPs are predominantly oriented towards infrastructure development for the tourism industry. The overfunding of tourism and community development ICDPs has been to the detriment of the marginalized populations and subsistence farmers. The felling of trees for guest house construction, the loss of natural habitat for apex predators such as Asa, the loss of old growth forests which sequester carbon, and the disregard for environmentally oriented marginalized populations such as Northwestern Gandruk has placed an emphasis on development that overshadows conservation of biodiversity and natural resources. This signifies that ACAP's programs have not led to greater conservation in the area. Lastly, conservation programs are only valid and sustainable when they have met the dual objective of protecting and improving the livelihoods of those that live within the area and also the native flora and fauna. In conclusion, what comes in theory and ideology does not always transition seamlessly into practice. Thank you.